There is a man standing in his kitchen right now who has not needed his paycheck in 3 years, and if you met him tomorrow, you would never know it. He is 53. His name, for the sake of this story, is David. No alarm went off this morning. He turned it off years ago and never bothered to turn it back on. His dog is waiting by the door, tail thumping against the cabinet, more insistent than any phone has ever been. He pours coffee into a plain mug from the hardware store down the street, the kind you buy in a 3-pack without thinking twice. He checks his phone. Nothing urgent. There never really is anymore. If you walked past him at the grocery store this afternoon, you would see a tired-looking man in a fleece jacket debating between 2 brands of pasta sauce. You would not see the number sitting quietly behind him, the number that means he is technically already free. That is the whole point of what you're about to hear, because this story does not end with a resignation letter or a dramatic walkout. It ends somewhere much smaller and much stranger. Let's go back to the beginning. 26 years earlier, David is 27, working as a claims processor at a mid-sized insurance company. His manager, Denise, has a habit of forwarding emails with nothing attached but 2 words: "Please advise." David makes $51,000 a year. After rent, after his car payment, after groceries that always seem to cost more than the receipt suggests they should, there is not much left. He is not miserable. That's the trap of it. He is just tired in the low, constant way that never gets bad enough to quit over and never good enough to feel like an actual life. His days have a rhythm he could sleepwalk through. The same elevator, always a few seconds too slow. The 9:15 stand-up that somehow runs 40 minutes. A coffee bought out of habit, not pleasure, from the same drive-thru every morning. Home by 6:40, too tired to cook. Asleep in front of the TV before the 10 o'clock news finishes. Then one Tuesday, everything changes because of one sentence a coworker says in passing. "My uncle retired at 45, his coworker Tom mentions over lunch, picking at a sandwich. I still don't fully understand how. David laughs it off, but that night, alone in his apartment, the sentence won't leave him alone. He opens his laptop at 11 p.m. just to look something up. One article leads to another. By 1:30 in the morning, he has read the words financial independence so many times they've stopped looking like English. But one idea sticks, simple enough to fit in a single sentence. There is a day, a specific, calculable day, when your money starts earning more than your job does. After that day, the paycheck becomes optional. He closes the laptop. He does not tell anyone, not his roommate, not his mother. He just sits there in the dark, deciding quietly that this is what he is going to do. Here's where most people would expect a montage, a dramatic first step. Instead, nothing happens for 2 weeks. David is scared. He keeps opening his bank app and closing it again. Then on the Monday after his birthday, almost as a private vow to himself, he sets up an automatic transfer, $950 a month, moving the moment his paycheck lands straight into a broad market index fund. It takes 4 minutes. He closes the laptop and goes back to answering emails like nothing happened, because to everyone around him, nothing has. This is where the story gets interesting, because now David has to live 2 lives at once, the visible one and the one nobody can see. At a friend's birthday dinner, someone leases a brand new SUV and talks about it for 20 straight minutes. David nods along, says nothing about the transfer running quietly in the background. His younger brother calls one weekend asking to borrow $400. Things are just a little tight right now, he tells him. It's technically true, it leaves out everything that actually matters. This is the part nobody warns you about, that building this kind of freedom means holding a secret that isolates you a little, even from the people you love. There's a real cost to staying quiet, and David pays it month after month without complaint. 3 years in, the market drops hard. Headlines everywhere. At work, his friend Angela, 2 desks over, a little older, a little more anxious about money, checks her own retirement account every single day that week, watching the number shrink. On a Thursday, Angela finally breaks. "I sold it all," she tells David in the break room, voice tight. "I couldn't watch it anymore." A few months later, the market recovers, and Angela quietly stops mentioning her account at all. David never tells her that his own money kept buying the whole time, automatically, indifferent to the headlines, picking up shares when they were cheap simply because the transfer doesn't read the news. He just listens to Angela, offers a sympathetic nod, and says nothing. Not out of superiority, out of instinct. There was never a natural place in that conversation to say, "Mine's fine, actually, because I never touch it."
Now, fast forward, 12 years in. David sits in a performance review. His director slides a folder across the table. A promotion. A real one. More money, but also more hours. More late nights. More of exactly the kind of stress that used to define his whole life. "This is a big opportunity," his director says, watching him carefully. "What do you think?" And here's the moment the entire story turns on. David says yes, but internally, something has already shifted. He's not saying yes because he needs the money anymore. He genuinely doesn't need it the way he used to. He's saying yes because he wants to, because the work still interests him, because for the first time, the choice belongs entirely to him instead of his bills. Nobody in that room has any idea the calculation happening behind his eyes is completely different from theirs. A few years later, his niece, fresh out of college and drowning in her first real bills, asks David for advice. David gives her real answers. Pay off the high interest at first, start small, automate what you can. Good advice. Honest advice. But he doesn't mention the size of his own account. Partly humility, partly because 20 years later, there still isn't a natural sentence for it. "I'm technically already financially free" is not something you casually drop between passing the mashed potatoes. This is the loneliest part of the whole story, escaping the rat race quietly enough that almost no one ever finds out. Then comes the moment. Not a spreadsheet moment, a Tuesday afternoon moment. David is paying his mortgage online, half distracted, when he does quick mental math without really meaning to, and realizes, almost as an afterthought, that his account could now cover this bill and every bill like it forever, without a single new paycheck ever landing again. He sits there for a second. No confetti, no phone call. He finishes paying the bill and goes to start dinner, because dinner still needs to be made regardless of what his bank account just quietly told him. He doesn't quit the next day, or the next month. Healthcare still runs through his job. He likes the people he works with. He genuinely likes being useful. So he keeps going, one ordinary week at a time. Except now, every single day at that desk is a choice instead of a requirement. That distinction, invisible to everyone else in the building, changes everything about how the weight of the job actually feels. And that brings us back to this morning. The dog by the door, the plain coffee mug, the pasta sauce debate at the grocery store this afternoon that no stranger would ever connect to a man who technically doesn't need to work another day in his life. Here's the number, because you've earned it by now. Over 26 years, David put in roughly $296,000 of his own money, $950 a month, almost without exception. Today, that account is worth well over $1.4 million. The gap between what he put in and what it became, more than $1 million, was built almost entirely by time, by one decision made in a dark apartment at 27, and by every unremarkable month afterward where he simply, quietly, did not stop. This is what nobody tells you about escaping the rat race. It doesn't end with an announcement. It doesn't end with a video, a countdown, or a stunned room full of coworkers. It ends in the margins, in a transfer setup on an ordinary Monday, repeated so many times over so many years that it eventually stopped looking like a decision at all and simply became who David was. You are not your job. You are not your paycheck or the badge that lets you through the door every morning. Somewhere out there right now, someone is living exactly like David did for 26 years, quietly, invisibly, one automatic transfer at a time, already free, and simply waiting for the rest of their life to catch up to what their bank account already knows.